Every time I'm at a show and people see my artwork and they're flipping through their books and they're like, oh, this is amazing, I always get the same question. Do you work digitally or do you work traditionally? And some people will have a stink eye on their face no matter what answer I give. But I usually work digitally. I grew up learning to work traditionally. There wasn't such a thing as digital inking back when I was a kid. I had to have an actual quill pen, an actual brush, and dip it in India ink and scratch it across the paper and get it to work. I had to learn how to use all these tools by hand to get the effect that I wanted. I spent years mastering that craft. I spent years mastering a brush only to have my Tourette syndrome get so severe that my hand got too shaky to be able to trust with a brush anymore. So then I had to reteach myself to ink with pens, like, felt tip pens and stuff, and markers and things that were more controllable, that wouldn't get out of control with a shaky hand that couldn't precisely control the pressure that I had on the paper anymore. There was a time that I could do like a 20-foot long laser straight pinstripe by hand. Couldn't do that anymore because I was too shaky. So I had to relearn how to ink completely over from scratch with pens. Then there came a point where I got too shaky to even be able to control the pins anymore. I spent 15 years in a wheelchair, barely able to walk, talk, or see most days. I couldn't feed myself a lot of days. I shook so bad, so constantly. So once things started to get a little bit better and medications and treatments started having a little bit of help with my Tourette syndrome and I got a little bit more steady, I had to reteach myself how to draw, this time on a computer. Because on the computer, I could set the controls to offset my trimmers and stuff so the lines didn't come out so shaky. Treatments kept working, medications kept working. I learned how to live with Tourette's, how to surf the waves instead of fighting the ticks off, and things got a little better and a little better. And now my hand's steadier most days. I don't have to use all that, artificial straightening out the curves and stuff that I used to use because my hand's pretty steady now. And I've been working full time in indie comics for 5 years now, almost six. And so my hand's gotten really good most days. Sometimes it's a little shaky, but I can knock out pages left and right all day. And sometimes I can pencil a book in 2 or 3 days. Sometimes I can ink 6 or 7 pages in a day, no problem. Um, I couldn't do that if I wasn't working digitally. And this is my job. Like, this is how I make my living. So the faster I get pages done, the more money I make, essentially. Like, I'm getting the same thing paid per page, but if I get more pages done a day, I make more per day. And I can get more work out more quickly. And I can make custom brushes like I just put out on my newsletter last month. So I can just make crowds real quickly with artwork that I drew myself, and I teach you how to make these kind of custom brushes on my Patreon. The crowd brush that I did is available for free on my Patreon. You can download it, you can use it on your own projects, you can make money with it, or you can customize it with the video that's attached and put your own artwork in it and make your own custom crowd brush. It's awesome. I want to make my Patreon as helpful to everybody as I can. Um, I love those tools that I get to use digitally. But there is something about working by hand. There's something about the limits of working with hand. I can't just infinitely zoom in on something. I am left with what I can do with a brush or a pen on a piece of paper. And that's an amazing challenge. It's really fun. It's a fun limitation. For my book, Fishtails Volume 2, I did a story in here, The Crucible, which features the Mighty Kess from issues 3 and 4 of The Mighty Caw. She's in this story written by my buddy T.S. Luther from Can't Be Killed Comics, writer of Tokyo Fire and Hellion and Bash that's coming to Kickstarter soon. He's an awesome writer. He wrote this really cool story, and I decided this time I penciled it digitally, and then I printed it out in blue lines on paper, and then I inked it by hand. A lot of it I did live on art streams and live on TikTok. Um, it was really fun to get to ink this by hand again, and it really brought me a lot of enjoyment. And not for nothing, now I have actual inked pages of artwork that I can put on the Crank Stomper as add-ons. You could, if you want to buy a piece of original artwork from your Uncle Fishy from a really cool story written by T.S. Luther, you can absolutely do that. I can take these pages to cons now and put them up for sale and make extra money on it, which is something nice that I can't do with digital inks. Uh, It's got its benefits. It really does. I miss working traditionally. There's lots of little things that you can just do with a brush in your hand, with a flick of the wrist, that's way harder to mimic in digital inking. It's just not quite as easy that way. But there's also no undo. I had to learn a long time ago, and part of why I'm so fast is because I had to learn a long time ago that when you screw something up in ink, you either got to figure out how to fix it or you just got to live with it or you got to start over. So I got really good at learning to roll with the punches. And when I made a mistake, figuring out how to just work that into the image and make the image work. And so that helped really speed me up learning to do that way. And I wouldn't have that skill if it wasn't for years of working traditionally. I love getting to do traditional artwork on sketch covers. I love getting to do traditional artwork on art streams like SketchUp with Mog and Mel or the Thursday Night Throwdown. All kinds of cool shows that I get to go on and do live art and sell it. I get to do live art at cons and sell it. It's fun. I love it. I honestly would like to get to do more traditional inking. I still like penciling digitally because I like having some of the tools and perspective rulers and things built in that can just make some of that stuff quicker and easier. I definitely want to do my lettering on the computer because that's got spell check and I don't have to redo stuff over and over again by hand. Um, but I kind of would like to go back and do more. What do you think? Would you like to see me do more traditional inking in books, or would you like to see me stick with my normal style of the digital inks? I mean, I've got a pretty good look going with the digital inks, and you know, and not for nothing. Even if I'm not having a 100% perfect day with a perfectly steady hand, I can still work digitally. I can't do that traditionally. If my hand's not 100% steady, I can't put a brush in it and get a decent line. I can't put decent artwork out. And I won't put out anything that doesn't look good. That's not up to the top standards that I could do in the time allotted to me. So, I don't know. What do you think? What would you like to see from me? What are your thoughts on digital versus traditional? I don't think there's an argument anymore that one's not real art because it takes a whole lot of skill to learn how to use these tools. Either way, whichever way you focus on, it takes a lot of skill to learn how to use the tools properly to get the effect you want. Just because the tools can do fancy things doesn't mean that you can make good looking artwork that's yours and original. So, it's a skill set either way. I had to relearn this skill set several times. I know what I'm talking about. But what are your thoughts on it? I'd love to hear. Sound off in the comments. Let me know. And hey, while you're at it, go check out Fish Tales Volume 2. You know where to go. Go Mr. Fish will take you right there. Check it out because the story, The Crucible, in there, written by T.S. Luther, is inked by hand. Everything else is inked digitally. One of the pages is inked by my son, and he's definitely got a little more manga flair to his work. So let me know what you think about it. Sound off in the comments, and I'll see you later. And remember, no matter what, your Uncle Fishy loves you, baby.